Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday, March 18th, Distance Learning Day number 1 for CC3. So as you can see, I am in my home, in my downstairs office, and this is where we're going to be recording a lot of instructional videos for you, including warm-ups, some classwork practice, and in addition to me recording, Mr. Adams will also be doing some instructional videos from his house, and we're just going to kind of be flip-flopping back and forth. So just as a reminder what the email said, so you can expect every Monday through Thursday some type of video with a warm-up, some practice, and some instruction. Accompanying the video will be some worksheet practice. Now, if you have a printer and you are able to print that out and do it, that's great. If not, all you need is a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil to do that practice, and we will provide an answer key for you. That worksheet practice is not part of your grade, but it is strongly recommended that you do it. Occasionally, we will also provide an IXL code. Now, that IXL code will be part of your grade while we are participating in distance learning. I know we had originally said that we would only be doing assessments as our form of grading, but that was when we thought we were going to be out for 2 weeks. And now that we know that it's going to be 3 weeks, potentially even more, we need to find a way to continue to keep your grades going, and we feel like IXL is the best way to do so. So the IXL codes will be posted every day along with this video and the worksheet practice, and those will be due by Friday at the end of each week. So there will be no new information on Fridays. Those are just for work days. Mr. Adams and I are both available via email during this time. Feel free to email us at any time with questions or concerns. All right, without further ado, we're going to get started today with a warm-up. So we're going to be evaluating functions, just like we were doing before all of this started. So on your piece of paper, go ahead and write down these 3 functions. We have f of x equals 2x minus 3, g of x equals 3/4 x, and h of x equals, that's a negative x plus 6. So go ahead and write those 3 down on your piece of paper. And the first one that I want you to find is g of 8. So go ahead and pause the video now so that you can find g of 8. All right, unpause whenever you're ready, and here we go. So again, g of 8 just means we're using function g, and we're substituting an 8 for x. So that's not g times 8, that's just telling you which function you're using and what you're substituting in. So I'm going to take function g, and I'm maintaining my structure here, keeping my work organized. So we have g of 8 equals, and I'm basically substituting in 8 for x. Now, the reason why I started off with this one is because it's also a review of LT3, which is multiplying fractions and whole numbers. So we'll be able to do a little bit of both. So remember, there's a bunch of different ways that you can multiply 3/4 times 8. The way that I like to do it is I like to think of, well, what's 1/4 times 8, or 1/4 of 8? That's the same as 8 divided by 4. Now, hopefully you all know 8 divided by 4 is 2. So the first thing I'm thinking is, well, let's see. If 1/4 of 8 is 2, I want to find 3/4 of 8. That just means I'm multiplying that by 3. So to find 3/4 of 8, I'm essentially doing 3 times 2. Let me move this a little bit closer so that you can see it. And we know 3 times 2, of course, is 6. So 3/4 of 8 is 6. Now, notice in my work that I'm maintaining the structure. I'm showing you what function I used, what I plugged in, and what my output was. So that was warm-up problem number 1. Hopefully you did okay on that one. Now, warm-up problem number 2. Again, after I show it to you, feel free to pause the video and do it on your own, and then unpause, and we'll go over it together. Warm-up problem number 2, I want you to find f of negative 3. F of negative 3, go ahead and pause the video now. Unpause, and here we go. So f of negative 3 means I am using function f, and I'm substituting in negative 3 for x. Wherever I see an x, I'm replacing it with negative 3. Again, maintaining the structure, showing what I'm doing each time. So f of negative 3 is 2 times negative 3 minus 3. Don't forget that minus 3 on the end there. That's probably one of the most common Algebra 1 mistakes that we see, is that students don't complete the entire function. Here we go, let's do the math. F of -3 equals, now 2 times -3, 2 times +3 is 6. So if 2 times -3 can't also be 6, it must be -6 minus 3. Now, if you don't have your number lines with you, you can always find one online, or you can draw one out, or just picture having one in my classroom. We're starting at -6. We're going 3 to the left, which means we're becoming further negative. F of -3 is -9. So again, you can see how I maintain the structure throughout. I have the function that I used, F, plugged in -3, got -9. All right, well done. Final part of our warm up, and then we'll move into something a little bit new for most of you. There's only one function we haven't used yet, so let's go ahead and use it. I want you to find h of -2, and I will say, be careful on this one. It's not as obvious as you think. So if you want to go ahead and find h of -2, pause the video now. Unpause, and here we go. Now, most of you will see this -x and just think, well, that just means whatever I plug in, it needs to become negative. So a lot of you probably did something like this. H of -2 equals -2 plus 6. Now, that is actually incorrect, and here's why. This -x is actually a hidden -1 times x. So whenever you see that, I want you to think of that as a -1 x. So what does that mean? That means when I'm plugging in -2, I'm not just plugging in -2, I'm multiplying it by -1. So that's -1 times -2. So it's going to actually end up changing the sign of whatever you substitute in, because a -1 times a -2 becomes a +2. So kudos to those of you who got it. And then we'll finish off the problem. 2 plus 6 is 8. So when you plug in -2, you end up with 8. So I did want to throw that one in there because you will see that on your practice, and you also might see that in your IXL code. All right, now if you're using a piece of paper, you're going to want to continue on. We're going to look at some different type of functions. Now this is something that Mr. Adams and I wanted to do with you this week, but because obviously we're not there, we're just going to do the best that we can remotely. So in your IXL practice, in the first couple of questions, you're going to see stuff that looks like this. Very straightforward, what we call linear functions. But then as the questions progress, you're going to see some different types of functions. So we're going to go over those right now. So I've set up 3 different functions that I would like for you to write down on your piece of paper. We have what's called a quadratic function, an absolute value function, and a polynomial function. I forgot to put the function notation on that one, so I added it to the end. So here's our quadratic function. F of x equals 2x to the power of 2. Now we haven't really done powers, but you have seen these before. Minus x plus 7, so we're going to be evaluating that function. Absolute value is g of x equals 4, and then these are called absolute value brackets. Normally we don't teach these, but again, you're going to see it in your IXL practice, so I wanted to make sure that we went over it. So 4 times the absolute value of x minus 5, and then here's our polynomial. This one's probably the messiest one. X to the power of 3 minus 2x squared plus x plus 5. This is, I mean, guys, this is stuff that Algebra 1 is doing right now. So this is really a treat that you get to be able to do this in a CC3 class. Here we go. So once you have those functions, here's how we do a quadratic function. Let's say I want to find f of 3. It's exactly the same thing that you would do if it was a linear function. Anywhere you see x, you're going to replace it with 3. So that means 2 times 3 squared minus 3 plus 7. Now here's the part that it's going to mess you up, is that power, that 3 squared. I just want you to remember what a power actually means. A power means to multiply that number by itself. So 3 to the power of 2 actually means 3 times 3. So if you want, you can write this as 2 times 3 times 3 minus 3 and plus 7. That's what I always suggest to my Algebra 1 kids to help them avoid making mistakes. So here we go. We're going to start doing some mental math. 2 times 3, that's 6. 6 times 3 is 18. So over here, f of 3, All of this turned out to be 18 minus 3 plus 7. Now, just because we're not there with you doesn't mean that you get to be unorganized with all of your work. So keep your work organized. Now that all of our terms have been simplified, we're going to go from left to right. F of 3 is 18 minus 3, that's 15, plus 7, and F of 3 is 22. And you can double check my math on that. You know I'm prone to making mistakes. So again, all we did was exactly the same that you would normally do if this was a linear function. Wherever you see x, you're plugging in 3. The only difference is this part here, that squaring a number means to multiply it by itself. All right. So you will see a quadratic function in your IXL practice. Make sure again that if you get that question wrong, that you read below and it'll show you the way of actually breaking it down. Okay, next up, absolute value. Like I said, we weren't going to teach this to you, but you are going to see it. So I'm just going to basically show you what you would do. It's a pretty simple concept. Absolute value means the distance that number is from 0. Now just remember, distances can only be positive. I would never say go run -5 laps around the track. Like that doesn't make sense. Even if you are running backwards, you're still running a positive distance. It doesn't make sense for a distance to be negative. So whatever number you put inside of an absolute value bracket, basically just turn that number positive. That's all that you have to do. So this is just 4 times a positive x. That's how you're going to look at it. So let's say I asked you to find g of -7. I don't know. We'll see what happens. That means you're doing 4 times the absolute value of -7 minus 5. Remember, absolute value, it's like waving a magic wand and poof, it makes it positive. That's all that it is, because -7 is 7 units away from 0. So really, this is just 4 times 7 minus 5. That's it. That's all that you have to do. Now I'm going to let you do the rest of this math on your own. I'm going to figure it out mentally. 4 times 7 is 28. 28 minus 5. You end up with g of -7 is 23. Oh, look at that, 22 and 23. I didn't even plan that. So remember, absolute value just makes whatever number you're plugging in positive. You will see that in IXL. Now you know what to do with it. All right, our final function is called a polynomial. This one is actually what my Algebra 1 kids are doing right now. We are doing polynomial expressions, so you're getting kind of a treat seeing this early. Now, a polynomial will have a term with a higher power than 2. Like this is called a quadratic because its highest power is squared. That's why we call it a quadratic. Anything higher than a square power is called a polynomial. So this one's definitely kind of that higher level thinking, and you may not see one of these on IXL, but if you do, you'll know what to do with it. So here we go. Let's go ahead and find h of, should we keep it simple? Should we make it more difficult? How about we find h of 2? We'll keep it simple. Alrighty, h of 2, same exact thing that you would normally do. Anywhere you see x, you're just substituting in 2. So here we go. This is 2 to the power of 3 minus 2 times 2 squared plus 2 plus 5. You're going to find that this is actually a lot simpler than it looks. Now remember, if you struggle with powers, just write it out. To the power of 3 means I'm multiplying 2 by itself 3 times. So here we go. H of 2 is 2 times 2 times 2. That's all 8 to the power of 3 means. Minus 2 times, again, 2 to the power of 2 is 2 times 2. I used a lot of 2's here, I just realized. Oh well. 2 times 2 plus 2 plus 5. There's a lot of 2's in this expression, but that's okay. Now here's the most common mistake when we do this. We read this as 2, 4, 6. You're adding, you're not actually multiplying. Take your time here. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So this is h of 2 is 8 minus, well, wait a minute, this is the same thing. 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. So that's 8 minus 8 plus 2 plus 5. Now, I am running out of room, but I would highly suggest that you pause the video and finish it now, and then I'll show you at the end what the answer is. So go ahead and pause. Unpause, here we go. 8 minus 8 is 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. 2 plus 5 is, drum roll please, 7. So H of 2 is 7. Congratulations if you got that right. Alrighty, so again, these are the types of expressions and functions that you may see in your IXL code. And you will also see these in, let me roll back in here, your worksheet practice. So attached to this video, you will see optional worksheet practice, strongly recommended, with an answer key provided. Then there will be an IXL code. It's called evaluate a function. You type that code into the search bar, complete the IXL, and then also all of the SMART score breakdowns will be part of the email. Please email Mr. Adams or myself if you have any questions at all. This code is due by Friday. Have an awesome rest of your day, everyone. I will see you tomorrow wearing a different Star Wars shirt. I'm gonna be mixing it up here, kind of. Hopefully I don't run out of Star Wars shirts before this is over, otherwise I don't know what I'm gonna do. Anyways, I will talk to you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.